Historically, most Japanese houses have been made of wood. Traditional methods developed and perfected by carpenters over more than 1,000 years are still in use today. But house building has become increasingly mechanized, and those skills are in decline. One man who is determined to uphold these long-established traditions is from Canada. His name is Adam Zgola, and he works in Japan as a lead carpenter. From selecting the lumber to cutting and assembling it, Zgola handles every step with care and precision. He has earned the trust of clients and contractors. As a contribution to regional sustainability, Zgola promotes house building using locally sourced timber. This time on Japanology Plus, meet Adam Zgola, a Canadian carrying on the ancient legacy of Japanese carpentry.
Hello and welcome to Japanology Plus. I'm Peter Barakan. Today we present one of our Japanophile profiles. I'm in a place called Fujioka, which is in Gunma Prefecture, about 2 hours outside Tokyo by car. If somebody asked you what you think a provincial Japanese house looks like, I think a lot of people might imagine something looking like a temple or a shrine, or at least some kind of wooden structure. In fact, what you'll find in most of Japan is houses that look pretty much like these. And the vast majority of them are made from standardized units that just slot together. Today, I'm going to be talking to a Canadian called Adam Zgola, who works as a carpenter in the traditional Japanese style.
A 45-minute drive from the center of Fujioka. Up in the mountains, deep in the forest, stands a wooden house built by Adam Zgola.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We finally made it.
It was okay?
Yeah, it was pretty hairy. So, is this the house you built?
Yes, yes it is.
This two-story home was built by Zgola 2 years ago. For the wood, he used only Japanese timber, including Japanese cedar and cypress.
You did this all by yourself?
This was the first house that I built completely by myself from planning to finish.
How long did it take you to do it?
This house took a while. Normally, if I work with a company, I can do from as soon as the plans are done to finish in about 7 months. But this house easily took twice that much.
Wow, over a year?
Yes, over a year and a half at least.
Okay. In Tokyo, fewer and fewer people are actually building houses completely from scratch like this.
Yeah.
How about out here in the countryside? Is that not the case?
Usually they're not custom, they're not order-made, they're just ordered from a large company and they're built very, very quickly. So it's actually become quite rare. Unfortunately, traditional building is considered to be expensive now. And it's not that it has become expensive, it's because the other options have gotten cheaper.
Okay.
Well, this style of house will easily be twice as much as not a handmade, but a factory-made house that can be built in 2 to 3 months. Specifically price-wise, obviously there's a lot of variation, but on average per square meter, you're looking at about 260,000 yen.
Okay, it's about, what, $2,000?
It's about in that range. The materials in this house and the material in the vast majority of modern Japanese houses are completely different. So that also changes the price considerably.
In Japan, over 80% of detached houses have wooden frames. That's what people want. But the methods of building wooden homes have changed with the times. Today, the most common construction material is pre-cut lumber. Developed in the 1950s, pre-cut lumber began to take hold in the home building business in the 1980s. Programmed tools cut lumber with high precision before it is hauled to the building site. Mechanization allows mass production, and all the lumber for a house can be factory cut in a single day. In the past, each piece of framing was cut to the proper size and fitted by hand. Now machines do that work, saving time, reducing costs, and shrinking the workspace needed on site. Construction costs with pre-cut lumber range from 120 to 180,000 yen per square meter. In contrast, Zgola builds houses using traditional carpentry techniques passed down for more than a millennium. Every piece of the frame is cut by hand. Working alone, it takes over a month to prepare the lumber for a single house. The traditional way of framing starts with the carpenter evaluating the qualities of each individual piece of lumber. This is to decide which part of the frame it becomes and its orientation. Finding the optimal use for each piece of wood enhances the strength and beauty of the structure.
It is the most important thing for the carpenter, for the dike, to look at the characteristics of the wood, because it's what he's going to be using. It's got innate strength, it's got innate tendencies to move and exert forces in different orientations. And if you can predict those forces, you can use them to enhance the strength of your frame. You can use it to add to the strength of the frame.
The next step is laying out ink marks. It is mastery of this task that is often referred to as the calling card of a fully trained carpenter. The marking determines the final shape of the lumber, so there can be no mistakes. It is a task demanding absolute concentration. Then the lumber is cut and notched with saws and chisels according to the ink lines. Cutting the lumber by hand without automated machinery requires both speed and precision. This is another measure of a traditional carpenter's skill. He must ensure every surface of every cut is accurate and smooth. Here, Zgola is working on splicing together a horizontal beam, a part that supports the weight of a roof or floor. He has carved complex joints into the ends of two pieces of timber so they can be joined firmly without the use of nails. Even the wood grain is carefully aligned for maximum aesthetic appeal. Amid the advance of automation in house building, Zgola continues to practice Japan's ancient way of carpentry.
Peter, this is Harigaya-san. He's the owner of the house.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How is it living in this house that Adam built?
It's wonderful. He did a very good job. And he chose the materials very carefully. It feels like living in a shrine.
Well, it certainly looks very nice.
Please have a look inside.
Oh, thank you very much. I'd love to. Ooh. Wow, I like all this exposed wood.
That's nice, eh?
Yeah. These beams, I mean, often with traditional houses you see the old ones, and so they're all much darker, and this is all bright and new, but it still has that very traditional feel to it.
The old houses, when they were first built, they looked like this.
I'm sure they did, yeah.
Zgola oriented this house so it had lots of south-facing windows. That lets in plenty of sunlight, making the interior bright and inviting. Zgola wanted to highlight the beautiful natural wood in the ceiling boards, so he chose sugi, Japanese cedar. For the floors, he used hinoki, Japanese cypress, which takes on an amber hue over years of use. And for the high ceiling, he incorporated beams retaining their natural shape in order to draw attention to the beauty of the wood.
all of these beams are connected with traditional joinery, and I've brought some samples to show to you.
Great. Okay, so what have we got here?
These are fundamental joints, and they've all been developed over hundreds of years to be really effective with indigenous timbers, with the Japanese cedar and cypress. But they're also easy to make. They don't look that way, but they're easy to make with hand tools.
They look like puzzles, yeah.
They are, and that's part of the fun, really. And there's no metal fasteners, and there's no nails, no screws.
Right, that's one thing you often hear about traditional Japanese architecture, that there's no nails used, and I've never quite understood why that is.
Japan is a very damp environment, and if you have metal interacting with wood, it will start a rotting process really quite quickly because of the condensation of the moisture on the metal fasteners. That's one thing. Another thing is that Japan has earthquakes. If you have metal fasteners, you've got something very hard interacting with something that's actually relatively quite soft. And so if you start adding the forces of the earthquake to it, to the frame, you're going to get a situation where that metal is actually compressing the wood as it's fighting that movement. After a couple of fairly minor earthquakes, and those happen quite often, you're going to get this loosening of the frame, and in essence, that metal fastener isn't doing anything after a while. The other thing, too, is that these joints, even though they look very complex, they're doing things that are very, very important. A good example is this section here. I can take it apart so I can show it to you. This part here is this beam right here, and you can see how it connects through the post right there. And these two beams here, this is keyaki, they're connecting together. And when this frame came together, it's actually quite difficult to get everything fitting together from this direction, this direction, this direction. So you can't have it all tight together at first. There has to be some kind of leeway, some kind of give in the frame in order to assemble it. But you have to be able to locate things. So that's what this joint is exceedingly good at. This goes right through the post, and this goes in through here, like this.
Okay. Wow, it's a weird shape.
It's not going to fall out. It's going to stay where you want it to be. And then these wedges, you can see it from this side, these wedges, when driven in from the top, close everything together. And in reality, you actually pound these in, right?
Okay, so you wouldn't actually see them sticking out.
Well, they're actually incorporated into the wall.
Oh, they are?
As it is now. But you can cut these flush once they're driven in, but I keep them long so that once the frame's up, it's going to take a couple of months before I start doing the interior finish. So if the wood is moving, if it's shrinking for the seasonal differences, I can continue. I can adjust it and make sure it's tight when I make the wall.
Okay.
So this isn't a new idea. This has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Adam Zgola was born in 1975 in Ontario, Canada. At university, he studied environmental design. He became interested in Japanese architecture while learning about wood construction. At age 27, he moved to Japan to learn more about traditional Japanese house building. But Zgola found, to his disappointment, that most neighborhoods in Japan consisted of mass-produced housing. After 6 months, however, he discovered a village deep in the mountains of Gunma, where Japan's traditional way of life still lingered. So he moved there.
Let's go have a look. It's not very big, mind you.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. It's if you think about the Japanese floor size, it's about 3 tatami mats.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you lived there for how long?
Well, it was close to a year.
Okay. What made you want to live in a place like this?
I didn't want to live in a place like this. What I wanted to live in was this village.
Okay.
And well, here you can see. Look, this is what I saw when I woke up, right?
Okay, that's That really is quite beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it's very kind of cloudy today, but I bet on a clear day it must be absolutely stunning.
Oh yeah, it's incredible, especially in the winter, because in the winter it's crystal clear. If you go a little bit further down, there's a school, an old school. There's quite a few houses, there's a community. And when a friend of mine introduced me to Harigaya-san and to this village, I felt like I had found a treasure. And not just as a tourist, but I wanted to see if I could get involved, if I could live in this environment. I was interested in the architecture, but to see people living in a traditional way, people in this village, the way they live hadn't changed considerably in the past 100 years. They were still in tune with nature, with the cycle of planting, of harvesting. It's just things that they continue doing.
You started in environmental design. What took you from that to carpentry?
I had the opportunity to dismantle an old house. It had been standing for about 120 years, but it had become a little bit dangerous. So the next door neighbors wanted to have it taken down before it fell down. And so I got the deal that if I dismantled this house, I could keep all the timbers.
Wow.
So over the span of a couple of months, with a lot of volunteer help, we dismantled it. And on the last day with the crane, we had trained professionals to make sure it didn't fall down. We took it apart. And that day, that house was gone. It was a pile of timber. And I realized that there was no way to build it again. Not the way I was now, or at that point. The way it was at that point, it was an impossibility.
You just didn't know how to do it. You didn't have the skills, you mean?
I didn't have the skill. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the knowledge, the in-depth knowledge of how to build a house like that. Knowledge you can learn. But then I also realized that I needed the skill. And that's what led me to the apprenticeship.
How did you go about finding somebody to apprentice with?
It wasn't smooth. I was introduced to a very, very skilled carpenter. Actually, he's incredible. And the first time I met him, he said no. Because people say, yeah, it's for a foreigner to get an apprenticeship is very difficult, right?
How much Japanese did you speak at the time?
Not a lot.
Okay.
So there was a communication problem. But more than that, there was a cultural problem. A Japanese person, you say shugyo or apprenticeship, they know immediately the level of commitment, the level of respect, and the patience that you need to get through it.
Yeah, it's taken for granted in this country, probably not anywhere else.
No. And for a carpenter to look at someone like me at that point, he would assume I had no idea. And I wasn't ready or willing or even able to make that commitment. So he said no, and I went back, and I kept persisting. And after months and months, I think he finally decided it was okay.
Okay.
And after 3 years, I learned a lot from him.
After completing his apprenticeship in 2010, Zgola opened his own carpentry firm. His expertise has earned him the trust of contractors, and he has served as lead carpenter in the building of 6 houses so far. Although Zgola is now established as a carpenter, he continues to visit beautiful old houses to deepen his understanding of the craft. This 300-year-old building is recognized as a national important cultural property. It is open to the public as a tea house. Zgola says he feels inspired by homes like this one that have lasted for centuries, and he learns a great deal from observing the techniques used to build them. As a foreigner, Zgola goes the extra mile to understand the Japanese way of life. He loves speaking with people who can tell him what the old houses are like to live in.
Where would the kitchen be for preparing foods?
Food preparation for cooking would be done over there on a table or platform of boards. The rest of the cooking would be done here. Here's where the pot would hang. The ingredients would go into the pot and simmer. No frying.
No?
Not when I was little.
Really?
Mostly simmered.
What about grilling?
That was done here too.
Zgola says that learning more about the traditional way of life helps him to build houses that people feel good living in.
When you go to these old farmhouses, you'll kind of have a feel for what the original carpenter was trying to do. Do you feel like there's a kind of a conversation there when you go to these old houses?
That's one of the reasons why I go.
Okay.
It's true, it sounds a little strange, but it is a form of communication. And when I first started going to these old houses, I was interested in asking about their skills. And as I started to understand more and more, my focus changed a little bit. I understood that no matter how well I built a building, it wouldn't last for 300 years. There's no way, it just can't. It's the people who use that building, that take care of that building, that feel like it's their home. They're going to make that decision. They're going to make that decision whether or not that house is going to still be standing after 300 years. And so when I realized that, and I looked at those old houses, I understood that that carpenter wasn't thinking about his skill when he was building that house. He wasn't making his masterpiece. He was making a home for his clients, and he was using his skill to his utmost in order to make that their home. And when you get to that level, that's what the people feel when they're living in the house, and that's what's going to make that building last. That was an important realization, and building this house, that really settled in to me.
Zgola is now focused on building houses using local materials in order to support the creation of sustainable communities. Before modern transport, a house had to be built of local materials, but that approach is fading away. These days, builders can easily get lumber from anywhere in the world. Zgola meets often with people in the local timber industry. Their cooperation is vital to his vision of making local economies more self-sustaining. Today, he is meeting with Kazuo Azami, a forester from the area. Azami's family have been managing this forest for generations. When forests are left untended, the trees don't grow well. Only years of conscientious pruning and thinning can create valuable timber.
When you're choosing a tree, you need to hug it, and you need to look up along the trunk.
House building requires timber that is straight, and Azami has taught Zgola how to identify the most appropriate trees. In the old days, a carpenter and a logger would discuss what to cut down, so the carpenter also needed detailed knowledge. Now Zgola, too, is acquiring that knowledge. Another essential component of using local wood is the sawmill. Zgola often visits this local sawmill run by Kohei Kurita. In the past, they would actually saw logs here. Now they mainly trade in pre-cut lumber. But when Zgola is able to acquire a full log, he has it sawed here.
This will make a lovely board.
Definitely. You rarely see one so free of knots.
Wouldn't it make a good ceiling?
A great one.
Zgola believes that even one carpenter striving to know and use local lumber can make a difference.
If you look here, we're in basically a cedar forest.
Right.
They're planted for the purpose of being materials, being building materials. And since they're not being bought, money is not coming into the forestry groups that are responsible for these mountains. So they don't have the resources to take care of them.
Uh-huh.
So the mountains are getting darker, they're overgrown, and that has a big impact on the environment on the bottom of the mountain.
So it's a whole vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle.
Ah.
But, you know, I mean, that's for the environment. To be honest, if you can make a house with local materials, you're using the best materials, honestly, because a tree that was grown in this environment is best suited for it.
Mm-hmm. And presumably this whole vicious cycle is being driven by economic pressures?
It's being driven by efficiency. And efficiency is not intrinsically evil, I don't think, but it has to be checked. Because there's economical efficiency, then there's social efficiency. And they're not always on the same side. The way I work is I like to build connections and to have interactions. I've had the benefit and the good chance to build connections with people from the mountain all the way down to the finished product. And that is going to lead to the best possible product that I can make for the client. It's a team effort. And a team doesn't work well unless you've got those connections and those communication lines.
Okay, so you really need that local community working together.
It's the best approach. It's not the most economically efficient, mind you, but it reverberates.
Right.
It changes it from just being a source of making money.
Finally, we always ask the same last question on these Japanophile programs. What is Japan to you?
Japan has changed for me since I first arrived. When I first arrived, it was my adventure. And as I chose a path of study, it became my teacher. And then it became my challenge when I started being independent. But after having the opportunity to make these connections with the people that I work with, they're not just business relationships. And being able to both work and live in an environment like that, it makes me realize that Japan has become my home.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next time, kombu, this edible seaweed, is a key ingredient in Japanese cuisine and also considered a symbol of good luck. We go to Hokkaido to find what roles kombu plays in Japanese culture.